Right, next section. The virus bullshit. A report out of Belgium this week where it stated over a half of the coronavirus infections revealed this summer by one of Belgium's biggest labs were old and no longer contagious, but were still reported as new cases. Now, the Belgian daily newspaper Het Laatste Nieuws examined the tests carried out by AZ Delta, AstraZeneca, one of the largest labs in the country, and made a stunning discovery. And almost half of all positive cases reported throughout June, July and August were actually people with an old infection. And the problem, they found, it turns out, lies in the PCR COVID-19 tests. The paper reports that the scientific data reveals virus particles can be detected up to 83 days after the actual infection, and this led to instances where people were no longer contagious but were still registered as positive cases. And according to HLN, the news people, all of these people had to be quarantined. Now, other so-called Belgian experts, of which there are none, sounded the alarm in mid-July, probably because of these results that were fake again, when coronavirus numbers spiked after a relief in June, and even insisted that the second wave had already begun for the country. And they said we may have had to deal with the old infections largely in the summer months, and this is according to the lab's clinical biologist Frederick van Hoyke told the paper. That'll be another fake checker group will now flag on social media when someone actually states the actual facts. Fact checker. Wouldn't know a fact if you fell over it. Common sense question again. Why has this not been reported in the media? We're going back to the UK. The UK has agreed to settle a lawsuit of how it selected an IT contract for coronavirus testing at its Lighthouse Labs. And the BBC understands that the settlement will cost the government up to £2 million. The British company Diagnostic AI, claimed it lost out to European rival Eugentech despite spotting some positive coronavirus cases its rivals missed. And it sued the government over the decision, claiming the selection process was unfair and unlawful. Now, Lighthouse Labs are a UK-wide network of specialists, there's that word again, specialists and experts, jackasses is the correct term, coronavirus laboratories managed by the government and run by private firms. All very Langley, that, isn't it? When the labs were set up, companies pitched in to analyse the test results. Now, the UK Lighthouse Labs have been established to dramatically increase the number of coronavirus tests that can take place each day to support the national effort against the coronavirus pandemic. The Lighthouse Labs are managed through a partnership with the Department of Health, Medicines Discovery Catapult, who are out of Alderley Park facility, who are involved in the adrenochrome scandal we covered in Expose 3. The UK Biocentre, the University of Glasgow, GSK, AstraZeneca, who was funded with the American people's money by Mr. Trump. the University of Cambridge and Perkin-Elmer. Now, their development is also supported by the NHS, Public Health England, the Scottish Government, BioAscent, and the University of Dundee, the Welsh Government, and their Life Sciences Hub, Wales. Unreal. Here we go again. What are we on? Virus BS. Here's another virus. The UK Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab said he was really worried that the UK Prime Minister could have died from COVID-19 after he was admitted to intensive care in the spring. What a load of BS, Mr. Raab. Yet another leading figure who is born too. And it seems the real pandemic's largely people who are born too. To me anyway. Now, the Foreign Secretary stood in for Boris Johnson during his time in intensive care while he recovered, and speaking at the Conservative Party conference, Mr. Raab said the virus nearly took the life of the PM, and that he was also worried for the PM's fiancée, Carrie Simons, but always had faith he would pull through. Now, Mr. Johnson had spent 3 nights in intensive care at London's St Thomas's Hospital in April after allegedly contacting the virus. Methinks he would have been better served spending 3 days in the barbers, if you ask me. President Trump said Thursday night that he and First Lady Melania, like the last first man, would begin the quarantine process, which is supposed to last for 14 days, but miraculously turned into 3. After one of his closest advisors, Hope Hicks, who travelled with him several times this week on board Air Force One, tested positive for the virus. Now, Hicks, who was 31, served as Trump's campaign spokeswoman from the beginning of his candidacy and then as White House Communications Director before leaving in March 2018 for a job at Fox News. And she returned to the White House in February in the role of counselor to the president. 31-year-old counselling. Very pretty counselor, I might add. Maybe that's why. So Trump told Fox News' Sean Hannity during a live interview Thursday night that he and the First Lady were tested after they learned about Hicks and were awaiting the results. She tested positive and I just went out with a test. So whether we quarantine or whether we have it, I don't know, Trump said. I just went for the test and we'll see what happens. Who knows? We spend a lot of time with Hope, so we'll see what happens. Now, Trump later tweeted that he and the First Lady, in the meantime, will begin our quarantine process. And it was unclear then as what that would look like in practice and whether that means he would be cancelling his events, which included a campaign rally in Florida. So that's what happened last Thursday. You all know what happened next. What a load of trumpery that is and was. More acting. Because according to the trustee, he was in Greenland with fellow Black Sun members. Common sense question for the next piece. We're going to start off with a common sense question. Has anyone asked why all the governments involved in the New World Order installation insist on wearing the masks, even though it has been proven they offer no protection against viruses? I suspect we are going to find out why with this report. The mask manufacturers have switched the alleged virus protection masks to new ones with secretly built-in microchipped masks with hard-to-find RFID chips in them. Oh my. These masks all came from China. And now you know why Kushner, FEMA and Gavin Newsom, with the complicity of Mr. Trump, as he was told about it, I was there when Kim spoke to him, that Kushner blocked American companies from selling masks and bought them from China and India, microchipped. Now, France was forced to respond to fears about microchipped face masks only last month. Jerome Salomon, Director General for Health in France, has tried to reassure the public after questions surfaced as to why some face masks have an electronic chip inside of them, and some fear that they could be used to trace the wearer. Salomon said, "I can tell you that cloth masks are excellent in France. I wear them every day and they are better for our environment. They can be washed and reused." And then he said, "They are made in France and have no chip inside. That I can guarantee." And then he went on and did a contradictions piece that kind of reminds me of our last show, and said, still, some masks actually have chips inside, but these are not intended for any type of identification, tracking, or tracing. Common sense question. How does he know they are not used for those purposes? But then he revealed this classic. He said, instead, they allow the manufacturer to count the number of times the mask has been washed and reused so that they can warn the user when the recommended maximum has been reached. Okay, Mr. Salomon, or is it Solomon? So basically what you're saying is here, let me get this right. So for the manufacturers to warn the user of the maximum washing has been reached, would then have to contact the user to do so, right? So how would they be able to do that without tracing or tracking? Yes, I know, it's a common sense question again. So in other words, the French Director General for Health claims to his country people that some masks wear this chip to show owners how often they have already been washed. An RFID chip for a scrap of fabric that is not worth washing because of the low price, and even less because it's known to be infected by bacteria and mold after a short period of wearing. So that this health risk does not disappear with normal laundry. Now, the manufacturers of these masks have started to equip them with an RFID chip, which can be used to determine the location and daily movement profile of each mask wearer down to the meter and at any time. Of course, the total surveillance of humanity is one of the primary goals of the New World Order, as not only I, but also other alternative media could irrefutably prove. It's all very Robert David Steele and Clowns in Panic show, is it not again? So, let's now take a closer look at Mr. Salomon, shall we? Born in April in 1969, is the 16th arrondissement of Paris to a father who was administrator in the National Assembly and a mother who was a teacher. He is the grandson of the resistance fighter Simone Levy, himself the granddaughter of Captain Alfred Dreyfus, who was convicted of espionage and then rehabilitated. He is also the great-grandson of Pierre-Paul Levi, and one of the discoverers of the diphtheria vaccine. Yet again, it has a line of being born to. And at that point is way beyond a coincidence. So now we have the French General Director for Health of a born to Jewish parents as well as a standing Prime Minister for the UK in the previous article. Now the article goes on and states Jerome Salomon is of particular importance as it's well known the New World Order is not only but above all an idea of Jewish globalists. And the Jewish globalist Jacques Attali wrote as follows back in 2011. I think that his date is wrong, but you'll get the gist. And he said, around 2050, under the pressure of the market and thanks to new technological means, the world order will become a single world market, planetary and stateless, to unite. The whole world as a single market without democracy. I call this coming world super empire. First, public order is dismantled, then the sovereign states, and finally the nations themselves. This global market will be uniform and stateless, and will be based on the former nature of California. Since London's cultural values have long resembled those of Amsterdam, Boston those of London, and Los Angeles those of New York, the super empire will remain partly American. Partly. The consumer goods produced will largely be a continuation of nomadic goods. The culture of the super empire will be a crossroads, its way of life unstable, its values individualistic and ideals narcissistic, and this is how the first phase of the future begins. Go fuck yourselves. That's my answer to that.